So as mentioned, my name's Taylor. I am from Eagle Ground Community Gardens, and today I want to talk to you guys about growing seedlings, specifically for beginners. I do acknowledge that many people watching this right now may actually have more information than me, and I just recognize that there's multiple ways to approach this hobby and to approach any hobby, right? You can also approach any hobby with a very beginner, a beginner mindset, or you can go all in and purchase all the super techy equipment and dive right in from a really advanced perspective. So I want to look at both because ultimately you can grow seedlings with as little as water, sunlight, and maybe a little bit of warmth and some seeds. So we're going to kind of look at both options. So we'll be talking about what conditions are actually needed to grow seedlings. We'll talk about a basic and advanced setup options in case you do want to, invest in a little bit of equipment. We'll talk about things like germination, how to actually fertilize your seedlings, and then we'll walk through together step by step on the process of actually getting our seedlings going so you guys can really visualize it. Let's dive in here. All right, so we'll talk about seeds and germination, then we'll get into conditions for growth. We'll talk about containers because there's a million options. We'll talk about setup options in your home while you're growing the seedlings. We'll talk about fertilizer and what that actually looks like and how to fertilize your seedlings. As mentioned, we'll go through the process step by step together, and then I'll give you some closing tips. All right, seeds and germination. The first step when we are growing our seedlings is to actually get the seeds. And in most cases, when we picture growing seedlings, we're thinking about doing it in our own home during the winter months. February is typically when gardeners will start to get that plan going. They'll start to get some of those early seeds going at the end of the month. So this is a perfect time to really start thinking about what you want to grow in the garden and getting them going in your own home. We live here in Southern Ontario, and I imagine most of you watching this also live in Southern Ontario. And, tomatoes and peppers, they're not native to this area. They come from the Mediterranean where they don't have winter. So naturally, we need to give these seedlings a bit of a head start in the winter months here. So first off, we're going to get our seeds. I imagine by now you kind of know roughly what you want to grow in your garden. And we're going to actually sit down and purchase those seeds. You can get seeds from local seed companies. That includes William Dam, which is located in Dundas. Ontario Seed Company, which I believe is based out of Burlington. There's other Canadian seed companies like Vessey's, West Coast Seeds, Mackenzie, as well as Seeds of Change. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of these names. You can usually find them in your local home improvement stores, in nurseries, in Walmart. And one kind of cool thing about the seed industry is they're a little bit difficult to export. So a lot of the seeds that we're purchasing are from Canadian companies. So, if you're purchasing from any of these suppliers, they're coming within Canada and they're very good quality. Seeds are regulated and there's a lot of rules and regulations on how seeds are produced. There's also a great organization called Seeds of Diversity, and they operate a seed database. They're working to, protect the integrity of the seed industry, and then they're also looking to protect heirloom varieties as well. So they do have a seed bank and they do seed sales. So you're looking to support an organization, you can find Seeds of Diversity online. You can also get seeds from your local seed library. Both Brant County and Brantford libraries have a seed library. We assist with stocking them. So they typically roll out their seeds early March. So if you're interested in getting some from the seed library, just keep your eye on, the main branch here in Brantford has theirs usually roll out in March. And then the Scotland branch in the county has theirs roll out also usually in March. So, if you're looking to get them from the library, that's an option. If you're a seasoned gardener or you have gardener friends, they are often saving seeds. So you can, share seeds or receive shared seeds. Save seeds that are actually saved from the previous season directly in the garden. Equal Ground does a lot of that. And then also Equal Ground does a lot of seed sharing as well, which I'm going to talk about later. But, if you guys are interested in getting seeds from us, you can register for our host garden program or you can reach out directly and we'll be happy to share with you. So now that we've got our seeds, let's talk about what's actually going to happen to those seeds once we get them moving. Actually, first, this is the most important part of this entire presentation. If you take away anything from me today, let it be this. The back of your seed packets where the instructions are the most important part of gardening. I don't care whether you're a new gardener, a seasoned gardener, the back of the seed packet should always be consulted. So if you take a peek at the seed packet, this is the back of a Mackenzie seed packet, which we would find in Walmart or Rona or Home Depot. And this is for aroma tomato. And we can see that there's a bit of a description here at the top, just kind of explaining, the type of fruit that it's going to produce, as well as any, specific requirements when we are going to be planting them. In this case, it's determinate, and we don't need to stake them if we don't want to. Some important information, we can see that there's days to germination. So how long is it going to take the seed? Once we get that germination process going, how long is it going to take the seed to actually start coming out of its little shell? It's going to tell us how deep we should be planting the seed to make sure it can push through the soil. It'll tell us how, what the seed spacing should be and what the final plant spacing should be, as well as row spacing. Very, very important for seed starting. Start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost. This is really important when we're sitting down with all of our seeds to determine when are we going to start them. So here in Brantford, in the zone that we are, our frost date is early May, like May 4th, May 5th. So we're going to be working backwards from that date, 6 to 8 weeks. That's when we know we're going to start our tomatoes. We're going to talk a little bit later about the conditions for growing seedlings, but if you are choosing to grow just using window light, you might want to start them a little bit earlier. But it's really, really important for you to actually be consulting the back of the seed packet. And again, if you take anything from me today, look at the back of your seed packets. This information is the recipe that you need to grow this plant. Germination. So we just mentioned it, there was that days to germination on the seed packet. How long is it actually going to take for that seed to come out? Germination happens with water, moisture and temperature. It's prompting the seed. Okay, we have the right conditions. It's time to start growing. And it's the first step in the seed's life cycle. So with the water and the temperature, it's going to kind of crack open and you're going to start to get some growth from the seed. So we're mimicking natural conditions. When we think about native seeds here in Ontario, they go through, winter, and then come spring, it warms up a little bit, it starts raining, and it tells that seed, oh, okay, it's time to start growing. So that's what germination is. Every seed is different in how it germinates. Sunlight, temperature, moisture level, medium, every seed's going to be different. That's why it's really important to look at your seed packet, see if there's any specific instructions, and also see how long it's going to take. Some seeds will take 2 days, some seeds can take 30 days. So it really just depends on the seed. So this is kind of what that process looks like. This is likely a chickpea or some sort of legume variety. So we can see the seed here is just starting. We can see there's a little bit of moisture penetrating it because it's darkened, and it also looks like there might be a little bit of mold on it, which is normal. Then we have the reticule starting to come out. It pushes out, it starts to push into the ground, and that causes the little seed head to actually push up out of the soil. And then we get our first set of little baby leaves. So this is what's happening under the soil, and this is the germination process. We often don't see this just because usually it's happening under the soil. But if you're really curious, or you have little grandchildren, you want to do a little experiment with them, get a Ziploc bag, get some wet paper towel, and wrap some seeds in the wet paper towel, slip it into the Ziploc bag, and wait a couple days. Check on them regularly. You may actually, have an opportunity to see this process with your own eyes. It's very fascinating. That's very cool. Seed stratification. So this is a bit more of a intermediate to advanced term. If you've gardened before, you probably know what this means. If you're a flower gardener or you really focus on native plants in your garden, you'll know exactly what this means. So seed stratification is the process of mimicking winter and spring conditions. So when we think of a plant that's native to Ontario, in the fall, it's put out its seed pods, it drops its seeds. Those seeds then sit through the winter season. They actually essentially freeze. And that pushes the seed to become dormant. And then come springtime, when we introduce the moist conditions and the heat, it tells the seed, all right, now it's safe to come out. Without those winter conditions, there are many seeds, again, especially seeds that are native to this area, that won't know when it's ready to start growing. So without that seed stratification, nothing will germinate. This is typically just for Ontario natives, also things like milkweed, larkspur or delphiniums, lupin, bee balm, black-eyed Susans. There's not really a lot of vegetables that experience this, but if you have any of the seeds that I just listed, or you know that they're native to Ontario, consider popping them into your fridge for 30 days before you try growing them. Can also put them in your freezer, but just be aware that not all seeds take to the freezer very well. The fridge just seems to be safest option. And again, the whole intention is to try to mimic those winter conditions. Also, stratification only lasts so many months. So if you put them in the fridge in January, but then you forgot to germinate them this year, and okay, I'm going to grow them again next year, you're going to have to go through and stratify them in the fridge again. It doesn't really carry over for very long. So, not necessarily, this information doesn't pertain to vegetables, but if you're planning to grow any flowers or Ontario natives, just consider stratifying your seeds. If you're finding they're not germinating well, there's a good chance that they need to be stratified. Okay, conditions for growth. So, there's ingredients for plants to grow, just like humans. We need food, we need light, we need water, so do plants. The formula is super easy. You need light, some sort of soil or medium, water, and warm temperature. You're going to have a hard time growing a plant in the middle of winter unless it is February in 2024 and you have hyacinths growing in your garden. So let's talk about, what conditions we need and also what those two types of setup options could look like. We're going to look at it from a basic lens as well as an advanced lens. So light, all seedlings are going to require about 12 to 16 hours of light. It's going to depend. Some seeds actually need light to germinate. When we look at the back of our seed packet, if it's telling you to sprinkle the seeds on top of the soil, it likely needs light to germinate. But for most plants, they don't need light. So this doesn't become important until after those seeds have germinated and they've popped through the soil. So basic options for light, find a south-facing window that isn't too drafty and that, set up a table there, and that's where your seedlings are going to grow. You could also consider pairing that space with like a full spectrum light bulb in a lamp that you have that you're willing to lend to your seedling setup. So if you have a spare lamp, get a full spectrum light bulb from the Home Depot, pop that into the lamp and have that turned on over the seedlings as well. South-facing windows have worked for a very, very long time. If you're wanting to take it a step up, we can get some full spectrum LEDs. And that's what you're seeing in the photo here. These are the exact ones that I'm currently using in one of my spaces. LEDs are an investment. They're not that expensive. Their grow lights are not what they used to be. You can get them for fairly cheap, and there's also different places that you can get them, but they are an investment. And also when you're using lights, oftentimes you need something to mount them to. So this could be getting a utility shelf. This could be using the bottom of your cupboard, setting it up if you have some spare space on your counter and mounting them to the bottom of your cupboard. So we can get full spectrum LEDs. I prefer to get them from Amazon. I'm not an Amazon shopper. However, I do get the lights from there because they're fairly cheap. They work really well, and I can kind of get a click and play system where I can click a bunch of lights together. So, I have pretty big systems in my own home. So it's helpful to have those lights. And I grow a lot of seedlings, both for myself and for the organization. So this works for me. But if you're wanting to, maybe take it a step down, you could go to any home improvement store like Rona or Home Depot and pick up, like they make Jiffy strips. They're a little bit more expensive than if you were to get them on Amazon, but they'll make do. And in most cases, they actually have a stand for those, so you don't need to mount them to anything. If you're going to be purchasing lights, just ensure that they're full spectrum. Make sure that they're LEDs. They're going to last you hopefully forever, and you won't need to be replacing any bulbs. They're also good on the electricity bill. Avoid fluorescent bulbs. Fluorescent bulbs are what used to be used across the board. However, they get very, very hot. You have to replace them often, and they kind of do some damage to your electricity bill. You'd actually kind of have a hard time finding fluorescent bulbs right now. They don't really produce that anymore, but just so that you guys are aware. So the lights that you guys see in this photo, I did purchase these from Amazon. I have different sets from the same maker. They're the Barina Full Spectrum LED lights. And they make different sizes. They make 2-foot sizes, 4-foot sizes, and I'm looking anywhere from $50 to $150 for a full light setup. But again, you can also go to a home improvement store and pick up the Jiffy strips as well. You'll see them when you go into the plant section. So 12 to 16 hours of light, whether that's a window, those are LED lights, whatever's going to work for you. Absolutely need the light for the seedlings. Be aware that if you do choose to use the window option, your seedlings can get quite leggy because if they're not getting enough sunlight, they're going to start searching for the light. So that can kind of impact how they grow. If you're noticing that the window may not be enough, get a light bulb like I mentioned and pop that into a spare lamp that you have. Soil. This is another big piece of the puzzle, however, a very easy piece of the puzzle. When we're starting seeds, seeds actually have all the nutrients that they need to get about 2 to 3 inches tall, to get to their true leaves. That's what they're called. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So because seeds can take so long to germinate, anywhere from 2 days to 30 days, we want to use a seed starting mix. The seed starting mix is a sterile medium. It's going to help you avoid mold, mildew, any sort of diseases because it's sterile. It's essentially just perlite and peat moss. It's allowing that seed to access water. That's pretty much it. Once the seed starts going and the plant starts growing, that's when you're going to need to start fertilizing and also up pot with some nutrient-rich soil. But to just get you started, on the right here, you'll see a Miracle-Gro seed starting mix or a Jiffy seed starting mix. You'll find these in any home improvement store, nurseries. Anything that says seed starting is going to be a good option for you when we're getting those seedlings going. Now, if you're like me and you like to risk it for the biscuit, you could jump right into nutrient-rich soil. These are some of the ones that I have used in the past, or you could also get a Miracle-Gro vegetable soil. This is going to stop you from needing to fertilize as soon or to up pot the plant as soon. However, you may be risking mold and mildew. So you can jump the gun and go straight into a nutrient-rich soil, but you are risking more mold and mildew. And if you choose to do this, you need to ensure you have airflow. So make sure you set up a fan by your seeds just to help wick that extra moisture off. If you're a newbie, please just stick to the seed starting mix. I promise you, I'll be saving you a little headache. Water. Again, another obvious condition. We want to ensure that our seedlings, or our seeds specifically, always have constant moisture to germinate. If they dry out, those seeds are done. They're dead. So we always want to make sure we're introducing enough water to keep them moist, but we're not introducing so much water that we're getting excess mold and mildew and some gross conditions. We don't want that. Also, as the seedling grows, if your roots are continuously drying out, you're actually going to get root rot because those roots can now no longer take in water. So when we introduce water again, the roots are just going to rot and fall off. You also, when you're letting your seedlings dry out, you're risking stunted growth as well as death, which is what I mentioned. So too much water can cause mildew issues or dampening off, where the plant essentially gets a disease right at the base of the soil and falls over. And then too little water, you're going to kill the plant. So just try and keep it moist. You can always touch the soil and you'll be able to tell immediately if it needs water. Also, you can, if you're using little cups, you can pick them up, and over time you'll start to feel the weight of when the plant is dried out. So the more you do it, the more you kind of learn, but try to stick to a consistent watering schedule. Every home is going to be different on how often they need to be watered. Right now, my seedlings that I'm growing currently need to be watered usually every day, but I also have a lot of fans over top of them. So there's 2 ways to water. You can top water or you can bottom water. In the photo that you see on the right, this is bottom watering. So the seedlings are sitting in a tray and he's dumping the water into the tray to be sucked up underneath the cups. So top watering obviously is when you go from the top and it's self-explanatory. The pros of top watering, it ensures that the entire seedling and all the soil receives water. In my opinion, that's the only pro. Cons, when you're watering from the top, you're keeping the top soil that's exposed to air moist all the time. So you're going to be promoting mildew, fungus gnats, or these little tiny flies that are flying around all the time, disease. It can also wash away or bury your seeds or damage fresh seedlings. So if you want my opinion, we're going to bottom water. So pros of bottom watering includes even distribution because the soil is going to suck up the water as it needs. And also typically the roots are heading down, towards the ground. So being able to introduce the water from the bottom of the, vessel, it's going to help those roots reach water quicker. It's also going to protect seeds and any new growth because you're not introducing force from the top. And you're going to have a lower chance of mildew and disease because you're not introducing moisture to the top of the soil as much. Cons, it is a little bit messy. You do need a tray or something to stop the water from going everywhere. And it's also can be a little bit difficult to control how much water the soil takes up. So I try to err on the side of caution when I'm bottom watering. And then, 20 minutes later, if my plants need a little bit more, I'll give them a little bit more. Always water your seedlings, stick to a consistent schedule, and consider bottom watering from now on. This also works really well for houseplants too. Temperature. So this is sometimes one we forget to overlook, especially when we're new to growing seedlings and we have a setup beside our south-facing window. Maybe that south-facing window is a little too chilly and it takes a really long time for our seeds to germinate. So most seeds are going to need a warmer temperatures than they were stored in to germinate. I mean, when we think of those seeds again, that just went through winter, it's springtime. Now we're getting some nice sunshine, the soil's starting to warm up. You're going to have a really hard time germinating seeds in colder conditions. As they grow, your temperature becomes a little bit less of a concern, especially because eventually they're going to be introduced outside, and we're in Southern Ontario. In May, temperatures can fluctuate day and night. So as the seedlings get bigger, temperature is less of a concern. But to get those seeds to germinate and get them to pop out of the soil, we do need to be mindful of the temperature of where we have them set up. So basic setup when considering temperature is, if that window is a little bit chillier, consider germinating your seeds in a warmer spot of your house. And then once the seeds pop up through the soil and start needing that light, we can move them back to the window. If you want to go ahead and maybe take an advanced approach, in the right photo here, you'll see that there's a seedling heat mat, and it's self-explanatory. It just allows heat to rise up through the soil and help those seeds germinate a little bit. They're fairly inexpensive. You can purchase them from home improvement stores, Rona, Lowe's, Home Depot, even Walmart. And it just helps give them that a little bit more warmth to get going. Please do not use a home heating pad that you use for yourself. They're a little bit too warm and actually could fry out your seedlings. But yeah, just keep in mind, if maybe your seedlings aren't coming up, they either need to be cold stratified or maybe the temperature is actually too cold for them. So those are kind of the four main conditions, the four ingredients that we need to grow, but what are we gonna grow them in? So containers, you're probably thinking, Taylor, are you gonna lecture me on plastic pots? There's actually a ton of different vessels that we consider when we're growing seedlings, and they all have pros and cons. So my first piece of advice for you when considering what to grow your plants in, go check your recycling. Find some yogurt containers, some teacup cups, anything that has previously is intended to store food. You're likely going to have a good chance using those. We do need to make sure we're drilling holes in the bottom for drainage, but I would start with your recycling. You can use egg cartons, and I'm going to talk a little bit why this is not my fave option and why I don't suggest it. You can also use Jiffy pots, which are in the picture. They are a paper-based product. And then, of course, you can use old nursery pots. You can use plastic pots. And also you can do something called soil blocking, which we're going to talk in a second. Regardless of what you use, we want to consider the size. You need ideally 2 to 4 inches, nothing bigger. If it's too big, it's going to retain too much water. And again, you'll have those mold and mildew issues. If it's too small, the plants are going to become root bound and they're going to need to be up potted quicker. And you also want to avoid tall containers because for most vegetables, the roots don't get down that far. Just make sure that your containers has adequate drainage so excess water can be removed. You can just drill holes in the bottom. And also make sure you guys are using clean containers to avoid cross-contamination. This includes the plastic pots that have been sitting in your shed over winter and held plants last year. We want to make sure we actually clean those with hot soapy water to ensure we're removing any diseases that may be remaining from the previous year. We don't want to be passing those diseases off to our new seedlings. When choosing containers, it's a great chance to reduce, reuse, recycle. Walters here in Brantford has very large bins outside of their nursery where you can go and you can choose, you can grab some pots. People will come take their pots to be recycled, and then other people will actually come and remove the pots to use them in their own homes. So if you're wanting to take a peek at the bins at Walters, that's a good option too. So these are some different vessels we can consider using. We're going to move from the left to the right. So the first one is this nifty little metal contraption. This is called soil blocking. So we fill these spaces up really, really, really tight with moist soil. And then we push out these cute little blocks. They look like little blocks that Wally would produce. And these are containerless. We can only bottom water when we use this type of quote vessel, and that we need to make sure we're storing them on a tray so we can get them water. But this is a great option because you can actually see the root growth. You can tell when they need to be up potted or when they need more soil. I'm using this option for the first time this year. I am finding it's a little bit messy, and the blocks, if you touch them when they're not moist enough, they do fall apart. But this has been pretty fun. It's been an experiment for me, and it's nice because I don't have to use plastic. Up at the top, we have the egg carton option. As mentioned, I don't really suggest this. If you've ever gotten an egg carton wet or you've accidentally had a broken egg in the carton, it can break down very, very quickly. And I find that the spaces are a little bit too small for seedlings, but this is still a good option, if you're wanting to test it out or you have little ones, little grandchildren that, want to do an experiment, just be advised that you'll have to up pot these quickly, and you never want to plant with the paper product in the soil. You always want to remove the paper product. It's too thick for the roots to break through. In the middle here, these are Jiffy paper pots. Same idea, but they're a little bit bigger and they're a little bit more sturdier. But same thing, when you actually go to plant these, we want to make sure we're removing the paper pots. They market these as, oh, you can just plant them directly in the ground, but the membrane is too thick for the plant's roots to break through. So just keep that in mind if you choose this option. At the bottom here, of course, we can use plastic. This is the go-to for most people. This is what you buy your seedlings in. The plastic is reusable. If you take care of it, it will continue to carry over for many seasons. The nice thing about the plastic is you're retaining moisture. They have built-in drainage. If you're new to seedlings, I suggest just sticking with the plastic. Up in the top right here, we have, these are just trays. This is what a lot of greenhouses will do. This is what the city greenhouses do. And this is also what I do sometimes, where you just fill a big tray, which you can purchase in garden stores or home improvement stores. You just make sure there's drainage in the bottom. You can fill them with soil and plant your seeds that way. Eventually, though, they do have to be separated and their roots do get tangled. So this is a bit more of an advanced option. And then the last one, which you'll be familiar with, these are called plugs down in the bottom right. Pros to this, you can get a lot of seedlings grown very, very quickly. Cons are there's not a lot of space for them to continue growing, so you do have to eventually up pot them into a bigger plastic one with a nutrient-rich soil. This is a little bit more of a hands-on approach, but if you need to grow a lot of seedlings, it's a good option to get them going and saves you a little bit of space for a bit. So there's some considerations when choosing your vessel. Again, stick to 2 to 4 inches. Make sure that there's drainage in the bottom. And yeah. All right, so a basic setup. I know we just talked about most of this, but let's recap, what a basic setup and an advanced setup is going to look like. So for lights, if you want to, take it easy, you're going to find a south-facing window, and you can choose to supplement with a full spectrum LED light bulb on a spare lamp that you have at home. You want to go more advanced, we're actually going to get full spectrum LED light strips. We can put them on a utility rack or use the bottom of our cupboard, or we can purchase the Jiffy strips that actually have a stand, and we can look on Amazon or we can look in our home improvement stores. For soil, this is going to be the same across the board. We're looking for a seed starting mix, or you can make your own mix out of peat moss and perlite. You can also jump the gun and go to nutrient-rich soil, but I don't suggest this unless you're a bit more advanced, and ensure that you have enough airflow. So make sure you set up a fan. For water, same thing. It's going to be the same across the board. You're going to choose to top or bottom water, and my suggestion is to always bottom water. And then for temperature, we just want to ensure that our seeds are not exposed to super cool temperatures. You want to keep your setup away from drafts. And then again, if you want to take that advanced approach, you could slip a heating mat underneath your setup just while the seeds get germinating. And then for airflow, I've mentioned this a few times. This isn't required. However, airflow, when we introduce like a fan, it's going to, again, keep the moisture off of the top of the soil. It's going to help decrease the risk of mold and mildew. And also, when we have airflow, it's stimulating better growth from the seedlings and stronger growth. So their stems end up actually being stronger because we're mimicking wind. So when we think about these plants growing outside and there's wind coming through, they're going to grow to actually withstand that wind. So consider setting up a fan regardless. This is just going to help for stronger seedlings. And oh no. So I don't think you guys can see these photos, but it is my personal setup. So I'm going to explain it to you anyways. We're going to visualize my setup. I have a long 3-tiered utility rack. At the top of the rack, like on the bottom of the shelves, I have 2 light strips that are attached, and then I turn those on for 12 to 16 hours a day. On either side of the utility rack on all shelves, I have 2 mini fans that are constantly blowing wind over top of all my seedlings. On the shelves themselves, I have these big white trays, and that's where I've put my soil blocked seedlings so I can bottom water right on the trays. I really wish I could show you guys. Unfortunately, the photos aren't working, but alas, it's okay. We can use our imagination. Fertilizer. So this is a key component for growing seedlings when we get a little bit further in the process. So when we think of a seedling, the first set of leaves that it pushes out are not going to resemble the plant's leaves. Those are just the first set. Now, when the second set starts to come out, those leaves are called the true leaves, and they're going to start to resemble the leaves of the plant. So if we're growing a tomato plant, we're going to immediately be able to tell that's a tomato leaf. So when those true leaves come up, the second or third leaves, this is when we need to consider starting to fertilize. If you don't fertilize, your plant's going to lose juice really, really quickly. And you're actually going to be able to tell because the new growth is going to be yellow and the plant's going to start looking sickly. It's going to depend on what soil you use and the container size, but eventually you're going to need to up pot and or fertilize your plants. If you're fertilizing it and you're still noticing the plant's looking a little sickly, let's get it into a bigger pot. Also, if you're noticing that there's a lot of roots starting to come out of the bottom of the pot, we're going to need to put that into a bigger pot as well. So you're going to want to fertilize every 1 to 2 weeks. I was a little intimidated by fertilizer when I first started growing plants. I promise this isn't difficult. We're going to go to a home improvement store and we're going to purchase any sort of vegetable plant food. It really doesn't matter. You'll see that they have different ratios and they're toting things like worm castings and, bone meal. It really doesn't matter. Pick up, some sort of vegetable fertilizer, and we're going to be using 1/4 to 1/2 of the recommended dose for our seedlings. So I'm seeing this Pro Mix here. I look on the back, it's telling me to add 2 tablespoons for every gallon of water. We're going to reduce that to 1/4 or 1/2 of the dose. So we'll use, significantly less. And then you're just going to water your plants just the same way you normally do. Again, I suggest sticking to bottom watering. You're not introducing any bacteria on the top of the soil. That's it. Every 1 to 2 weeks, we're going to give them some food with their water, and that's it. This is going to help the seedlings continue to grow really strong. Please don't skip this step. You'll have very sickly seedlings when May comes. It's a long time to go without nutrients because we're starting them in a sterile mix. So they really don't have any other place to get nutrients. Okay, let's grow a tomato plant. So we have planned out our garden. We know exactly what we need to purchase. We're going to go purchase our tomato seeds from Rona. And I'm going to purchase a Mackenzie seed packet, an heirloom Roma tomato. We're going to come home. We're going to look at the back of it. We're going to determine when we're going to actually start the plant. So let's say, May 5th is our frost date, and that's going to bring us up to probably the beginning of March that we need to start this tomato plant. So I have a plan. We've got our seeds. Now let's pick a container. Because I'm a beginner grower, I'm going to pick a plastic 4-inch pot. And again, you can purchase these from home improvement stores. You can get them from your recycling. You can get them from the Walters recycling bins out front. Next is soil. We're going to pick up a sterile seed starting mix from Rona as well. Maybe when we pick up those seeds. We're going to make sure we have some sort of light set up, and I'm going to choose to use my south-facing window to grow my seedlings. So I'm going to get a table set up in front of my south-facing window. I'm going to make sure that it's not super cold or drafty. And if it is, I might consider starting the seeds somewhere else. And then we're also going to pick up some fertilizer at the same time. And this can be, any vegetable fertilizer. We're going to be using 1/4 to 1/2 of the dose. So I've got all of my materials that I need to start growing this tomato. So our first step is to actually moisten up the seed starting mix. We're going to put it into a bowl, add a little bit of water, get it nice and moist. And we know that it's moist enough when we pick up the soil, we squeeze it in our hands. There's no water dripping out of it, but also it's going to keep its shape. Okay. So now that we've got some moist soil, we're going to go ahead and fill those pots. And we'll make a little hole in the top. Now the depth of how far down we're going to put our plant, we can find that on the back of the seed packet. So let's just say that this tomato seed packet tells us we want it down about 1/4 inch. So we'll make just a small hole, drop a couple seeds into the hole, and cover them up. And we're going to go ahead and either put them in a warm place or put them in our seedling setup. We're going to let those tomatoes germinate over, probably the next 7 to 14 days. Now, it's going to be important to keep the soil that the seed's going to be in contact with moist. So I'm going to take a spray bottle, and every day, maybe twice a day, I'm actually going to spray down the top of that soil just to keep that seed moist, because if it dries out, the seed has officially died. Now, I'm noticing that the leaves are starting to come up. I see the first set of leaves, which is amazing. Now we wait for the second set of leaves and maybe the third set of leaves. So we now have the third set of leaves. We see the second set of true leaves, and we're actually going to go ahead with the tomato plant, and we're going to pinch off those. We have three set of leaves, so we're going to pinch off the most recent set of leaves. This is going to allow the plant to grow a little bit more bushy. We also now at this time that the plant now needs some fertilizer and/or needs to be up potted. So we're going to go ahead and prepare a fertilizer concoction with our water using 1/4 to 1/2 of the recommended dose. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to bottom water the tomato plant. We're going to make sure that we're watering and fertilizing this plant regularly. We're fertilizing every 1 to 2 weeks. And we're all the way up now until the beginning of May. Now, just because the frost date is at the beginning of May does not mean it's safe to plant out. However, we can start hardening off the seedling. Our seedling is probably now, let's say 3 to 4, maybe even 5 inches tall if we've been lucky. However, if we just put those directly outside in the sunlight all day for 14 hours with the wind and the rain and the fluctuating temperatures, that plant will die. So we're going to adjust the plant to outdoor conditions slowly. And this process is called hardening off. So on the first day, we're going to take the plant out, or we're going to put it in the shade for a couple of hours, and then we'll bring it back inside. The next day, maybe we'll put it in the sun for 1/2 an hour, but then the shade for 6 hours. The next day, we'll put it in the sun for 2 hours and then back in the shade for the rest of the day. The next day, we'll put it in the sun for 3 to 4 hours, and we're going to continue increasing that for a couple of weeks. Not only is this going to allow the plant to adjust to sunlight, it's also going to allow it to adjust to wind, to rain. Eventually, you want to be able to leave your plant out day and night as long as there's no frost risk. This is really, really important if you are growing plants just with window light, because they've had less opportunity to take in light than if you had them under grow lights, for example. So we've got our seedling, it's been fed well, it's hardened off, we're ready to plant it into the ground. This is the last step for seedlings. Make sure you guys are planting your gardens on overcast days. Make sure you're splitting up or roughing the roots. We take it out of the pot, we're gonna rough up the roots a little bit, we're gonna put it into the hole, pack it in, and then we're going to water well. And that's really it for the seedlings. The process is a little bit lengthy, but with patience and persistence, we will have beautiful seedlings come May. And it's really fun to be able to touch soil and to be able to do a nature-based project inside the house, in February, March, April, when things are gloomy outside and maybe we're getting some seasonal depression. So it's really nice to be able to grow seedlings. So I'm going to leave you guys with some tips here. When you guys are filling your containers, don't pack in the soil aggressively. You don't want really, really, really compact soil, or the roots aren't going to be able to spread out. Make sure you pre-moisten your soil before you're filling your containers. Make sure you're fertilizing every 1 to 2 weeks with 1/4 to 1/2 of the recommended dose. As mentioned, consider adding airflow to your setup just to ensure that you're not getting excess mold or mildew issues, and also it's going to help with the strength of your seedlings as they grow. Make sure you're staying on top of watering and you're being consistent. You want to avoid, introducing any problems with the soil, root rot. If your seedlings are wilting, there's a problem. So just make sure you're staying on top of watering. You can actually lift up the vessel to see if it feels light or heavy. After the first few times, you'll understand. And then if you have grandchildren, you consider starting seeds inside of a paper towel in a Ziploc bag, and you can kind of see them grow. It's really a lot of fun. And yeah, honestly, the seedling process is a ton of fun. It does take a bit of patience, but as I mentioned, like any hobby, you really need to start somewhere. So if you're new to seedlings, don't be afraid of the process. Just start, and it's skills that you can continue building on. You're never going to have it perfect. Even if you're an advanced gardener, nothing's ever going to go perfect. So just start, experiment, see where the process takes you. It truly can be a lot of fun. So yes, as mentioned, we're Eagle Ground Community Gardens. My name's Taylor. I'm the Greenhouse and Learning Center coordinator. If you have any questions about growing seedlings, you're always welcome to give us a shout. You can also visit our website. We often have lots of events going on and different education opportunities. So yeah.